membership. And I wanted to share it with everyone who's watching on my channel because it's such an important topic. It's all about simplicity. And when you think of simplicity, you probably think of decluttering, right? You probably think, oh, well, I need to tidy up my space and make room. And that's definitely part of simplicity. But I also want to talk about some other things that create simplicity because it's pretty hard to have simplicity in your environment unless you also have it in your mind. In our modern world, we have so much stuff going on and so many things. At any one time, we have around 60,000 thoughts in our minds, 1,000 thoughts, and around a big percentage, I think it's around 70% of those are negative and around 95% of those are unconscious. So there's a lot going on. And I'm sure you've had this experience before where you have this mental chatter going on, this clutter, this to-do list that you're lying awake thinking about at 1 o'clock in the morning when things are busy. You have these commitments and this schedule and you're behind and you have an inbox and you have 12,000 emails or whatever it is. All of those things bring up a sense of overwhelm for people, of procrastination and of the sense of needing to work hard to work through things. And, on the flip side of things, we also have the physical environment where we accumulate things. We attach memories and feelings to objects. And so you end up keeping that cracked university mug because it reminds you of your friends that you went to uni with 20 years ago. It's not functional and it's still sitting there with a pride of place on your shelf, gathering dust and dead insects. So this is what I'm talking about. There's the stuff in your mind and the stuff in your life, and they're quite intertwined. It's interesting also at the level of work where we think that we'll do things later and then we think that we can multitask. It's absolutely not true. Multitasking is simply doing things less effectively all at once. So when you bring your focus to one thing and you do it really well, at the exclusion of all other things and without any distraction, you actually do more things in less time. You can be more productive if you just focus on one thing at a time. And so in the sense of work, simplicity is about single tasking and planning effectively and managing distractions. In the sense of your life, simplicity is about clearing out the mental clutter and having a simple environment. So let's talk about mental clutter for a moment. Let's talk about all the things that you accumulate and which create fear or procrastination or worry or struggle. Rather than go down that negative rabbit hole, it's really important to know that you can change your brain state. And there's been some really interesting research conducted by Well coaches in the US and some other organizations around changing brain state. Dr. Shelley Carson is the one who's at the forefront of this research. And changing your brain state simply means consciously lighting up a different area of your brain depending on how you would like to be operating. Some of those brain states that can help you to become more mentally organized and to clear up the clutter are around experiencing things or being creative or using a logical thinking process or becoming more connected with people and having rapport. So there are those different areas of the brain that work in those different environments. And the great thing is that you can actually alter your brain state to conjure up the tools that you need to be focused in the moment or to be creative or to have great rapport. What do you think is at the core of all of this? Maybe it seems obvious to me and perhaps to you, but some people might not have thought of this. There is one thing at the core of all of these brain states, and it is simply being mindful of the state that you're in now and choosing how you will create your next state. Let's look at an example. Let's say that you need to get totally motivated for something that you're about to do at work. Or you need to get totally motivated to go out to a party at a friend's place tonight. You don't feel like going and you have to get motivated and, excited. So what you want to do is to sit in the present moment, be with yourself, and ask yourself some questions to get you feeling inspired. This is something you can do yourself to create this brain state of intention, of motivation. Why is it important for me? What else is possible if I do this? I wonder if, you could ask yourself this positively framed question that could conjure up a really great reason for you to do the work or go to the party. You could also transcend the moment and say, well, what's the bigger picture reason for me going to this party? Or what's the bigger picture reason for me doing this particular job at work? What you're doing is trying to find value-based reasons that excite your motivation and get your interest reinvigorated. So for the brain state of being intentional, or even this applies to being creative as well, is to get into that really open mind to clear out any stresses or clutter that are coming up for you mentally, and to ask the questions that are going to help you to get really fired up about doing that thing. Let's use the party example. Let's say that you're going to a party tonight and you really don't feel like going. It's raining outside and it's cold and you're tired, and this party is half an hour away and you've got to drive there, and there are going to be 50 people and it'll be loud and noisy. And you're thinking, I just want to crawl under the covers. Sure, you could do that. You could make an apology. But what would it be like if you followed through and were accountable? What would it be like if you were able to get yourself into the mindset of really enjoying the party? Because you haven't been out for a few months, because you haven't seen these people much lately, because you know that once you're there, you'll have a good time. Maybe thinking about those things will create a bit of momentum for you. And maybe you could think about all of the other opportunities that would come from going to that party. Like, what will I get if I go there? What will this mean to the host if I show up and participate? How will they feel? I bet they'll feel amazing and happy that they have all these people interested in coming to be with them and to celebrate. Why is it important to me to go to this party? Because I'll get to see my friends that I rarely get to see these days because I'm so busy. I'm going to really enjoy talking to Sally. I'm going to really enjoy catching up with Wayne and Sue. I know that we'll have a great laugh. We'll probably do some dancing. So you can start building up this story about what it's going to be like, to visualize it, to imagine it as if it were happening, and to get really motivated to attend that party or to do whatever other thing it is that you need to do. On the work side of things, there's also creating motivation, or perhaps problem solving is a good example to look at. Because when we get in front of problems, we tend to get stuck. We think, what am I going to do now? Maybe I'll go have a coffee, or I'll look in the cupboard for something to eat, or I will vacuum the spare room. That's typically what comes up when we have a problem. And so instead of catastrophizing the problem and getting all complex and cluttered about it and putting it off and delaying the schedule, you can see how that snowballs and builds something more complicated. But we wanted to keep things really simple. So in that instance, we could use a creative mindset and try to get the task finished now without wasting any time and without procrastinating. We could ask ourselves some questions that are more creative, like, what would make this problem solving more fun? What would help me to become totally absorbed in and focused on working this out? What would be the best outcome and the worst outcome for this problem, and how would I deal with either? So asking a few questions like that up front might help you to get over the hump of the problem, or to ask, where could I get help? There's a really fun thing that you can do too, which is called non-linear thinking, and it's great for problem solving. What you do is this: you grab something off your desk, let's say this little correction thing that I've got here for getting rid of pen in your diary, and we look at the traits of this and say, what can I learn from this with regard to my problem? So I'm going to look at the color first. It's blue. What would this tell me about the problem? It's also clear. Maybe the problem is clearer than I think it is. Maybe I just need to look at it through a different lens. We could look at the shape. It's kind of like a jelly bean shape, this thing. How is my problem shaping my thinking, or how is my thinking shaping the problem? What's the other way I could look at that problem? So you can see that there are a series of questions you could ask about the nature or the structure or the feel, anything like that from the object that you get that's going to get you thinking about your problem in a different way. That creative thinking might help you solve the problem. So that's an example of creating an intentional or creative brain state. Now, what happens if you're at work and you want to go deep? You want to be really focused and thinking logically about things. It's tempting when you have to sit down and do some focused work to clear up the desk and make a coffee and tidy up this and close down all that, and you have to go through this huge ritual before you can actually get to the focused thinking task. What if you could get there a lot quicker and more simply? What would happen if instead of having to have an hour or 2 hours of clearing out the clutter and getting your schedule sorted out and being distracted, you could just sit down and do that task? That would be amazing, right? Well, you probably know about the Pomodoro technique. And if you look at my podcast on iTunes, you'll see I've done a podcast on that topic. The Pomodoro is setting 45 minutes aside where you just sit and without distraction do the task. And you commit to that time slot and to working on in a focused way through that and by switching off all distractions. That's one way. But that's actually doing the task. How do you get into that focused headspace in the beginning? Well, there are some thinking exercises that you can do to help you prepare to be focused. You can switch on that focused, thoughtful, logical part of your brain so that you're totally primed. Let's say that you go through a 3-minute process like this. You sit quietly and you set your intention for the project or the outcome that you're about to tackle. So let's say you have an hour and you need to create a plan for a marketing campaign, for example. Could be any sort of plan. Could be a food plan or anything, but let's say it's a marketing campaign. So you think about what the outcome is going to be, what you'll get by the end of that hour, what the output will be, and you focus on that first. Then you enter into the task of creating the plan with a singular focus. You're saying, right, all I'm doing for the next hour is this plan. It could actually help you to say that out aloud because then you'll hear it and your brain will engage with it. So you're really clear on your intention is to just create that plan for the next hour. The next step is to stick with that and resist any urges to be distracted or to walk away. To set yourself up for that, you can switch off your internet, you can turn the phone off, you can close the door, you can set a timer so you don't have to worry about the time. You can do all those sorts of things to ensure that your environment won't distract you. Switch off the washing machine, the oven, make yourself totally focused on that thing that you're about to do. But what if your mind wanders? What do you do then? One thing you can do is to do a short exercise, which is called ABC. And the first thing is to be aware of the distraction. That's the A. So if you notice that something's on your mind, okay, I'm aware that I'm becoming distracted. The B part of the ABC is to breathe slowly for a count of 10. So to just sit and breathe slowly, maybe with your eyes closed, and just to ground yourself in that moment. And then the C is to choose to return to your task. So this is you making a conscious decision that you're going to go back to that task and resume what you were doing. That's a really simple thing, the ABC, awareness, breath, and choosing, that you can do in under a minute to help you refocus on the task that you need to complete. Another thing that you can do is to zoom in and out of the task, and this engages different areas of your brain and different types of brain state so that you can return your focus. So what you would do in this case, if you find your mind wandering in something that you're doing, to bring your awareness back to the task at hand, to really zoom out from the task and to see it in the big picture and why you're doing it and what you're doing it for, and to see what your hands are doing, to observe yourself doing the task. So you really zoomed out, breathe deeply for a moment, and then return back to the task. So those are two ways that you can avoid or manage distractions and bring yourself back. And it should take you a minute or two. It's just giving yourself a brain break so that you can refocus and continue to go deep on the task. So that's the second brain state, going deep. The third one is about being agile, and this is a really important one for those of us who do lots of different things in our lives, who are juggling lots of things, and who are tempted to multitask. I know I've done a bit of multitasking in my time, and it doesn't work. You just do lots of things not very well instead of one thing very well, as I mentioned earlier. So if you want to stop multitasking and getting things done, it requires a little bit of discipline. But you can actually get yourself in the mood with a short 5-minute exercise to trigger a more agile brain state. So the agile brain state helps you to switch off from one task and close it off completely, then take a short interval and move to the next task. So you have wholly and solely shifted your focus from one task to the next. And this process of engaging this brain state, the agile brain state, can be really useful if you're doing a task that requires you to go from big picture thinking down into detailed thinking and back and forth. So I would invite you to look at something that you have in your schedule for this week, some tasks that's in your diary. Here I am looking at my diary behind me. And where you know that you're going to be moving from one thing into another. For example, I know that right now I'm recording this video, and at 11, I'm going to be on the radio. So I'm going to be recording things for the next hour, and then I'll have to switch over to being on the radio. What you want to do is firstly finish your current tasks. So for me, at 5 minutes to 11, I'm going to finish all the things that I'm recording today and totally end them, like turn everything off, switch everything off, not have any residue of those tasks. Then I'm going to stand back from the task and reflect on what I've completed. So I'll look at the videos, the audios that I've created. I'll have a full précis of what I've done, and I'll sit and be present and open for a moment with those things. So it's like taking a pause or a breath. Instead of just moving straight away to the next thing, is to create that little bit of space. Then what I'll do is I'll shift my thinking to the big picture focus of my next task, which is speaking live on the radio. I'll totally shift my big picture attention to that, to think about how I do this every Thursday at 11 on 2EAR FM, which is our local community radio station. I'll think about why I do it, who I'm working with, what topic we're going to talk about today. I'll think about my intention for that next task. What do I want to convey in my messaging? And then when the phone rings, I'll be ready for that. It's 5 minutes and I've made a clean transition where I've totally closed off and completed the first task of all my recordings, given myself time to reflect on that, pause, think about the big picture, and then step into the next task. It's a really simple exercise. It only takes a few minutes, but it helps you to shift your brain state from one to the next without having the lines blurred and without having bits and pieces still open. It takes practice. Absolutely it does. But it's worth doing because it creates simplicity in your life. It reduces overwhelm and it reduces procrastination. The other thing you might want to do is start letting go. And when it comes to simplicity and decluttering in a mental sense or a physical sense, we tend to hang on to things that we may not necessarily need. We've attached memories or feelings or thoughts to those things. But what we can do instead of hanging on to all this stuff and accumulating things is to consciously let go of them, to ask ourselves, do I need this? Do I want this? Will I use it again? What purpose will it serve? To get back into that logical thinking and ask ourselves those questions. And I think this is relevant when it comes to personal relationships and to material objects. Sometimes we spend time with people that we've outgrown and that no longer serve us, and it might be time to let go of those relationships that are keeping us stuck in the past or dragging us down or back. It can be unhelpful to remain in a situation that adds no value to either person. And so it's great to think about letting go and, wishing well to the other person and moving on with your life. And there may even be a conversation around that you have with them. In the physical environment, there are things around you that you may not need any longer. Scraps of paper, post-it notes, broken pencils, chipped university mugs, any sort of thing like that doesn't have a purpose. 3 versions of the same shoe, ticket stubs from a band that you saw when you were 21. Those sort of things take up space, and our brains see that clutter and they translate it into a to-do list or a sense of weight. So the easiest way to deal with that physical clutter is to do 10-minute bites. 10 minutes is a reasonable amount of time to get one thing done. You can definitely complete 10 minutes. It's easy. And that might be a drawer or a shelf or a cupboard. Or in some cases, if you don't have much in the room, it might be a room. To clear it out, to clean it, to restack the shelves, to throw things away. And there may be some decision making in that process of, will I keep this or will I throw it away? And so you would go back to those questions. Do I need it and want it? Is it serving a purpose? When did I last use it? Can I live without it? Once you start clearing out clutter, notice how you feel afterwards. Tune into your body and notice the emotions that you're feeling and the sensation and the mental clarity and lightness that you have. What you'll notice is the more decluttering that you do, the more simple you make your thinking processes and your environment, the more calm you'll feel, the more balanced you'll feel, and the more relaxed you'll feel. And there's one other thing you can do to help make life more simple, and that is to learn how to say no. This is a tricky one for a lot of people, and I've been listening to some great podcasts on this topic. But what happens is people ask us to do things, to attend things, to help out with things, and often the automatic response is to say, sure, I'll do that, without really thinking about it. Or we say yes because we feel like we have to. There's an obligation. Actually, there's no obligation. You get to decide what you want to do and whether you're going to do something or not. The only decision you really need to make is how to break it to the other person that you're not going to do that thing. If you say yes all the time, then your schedule's going to get cluttered. Your life is going to become difficult. You'll become tempted to multitask, and you'll have a sense of overwhelm and excess responsibility. So the way to say no is to use the feedback sandwich. And that involves putting the no in between 2 positives. And here's how it could work. The first thing you say is, thanks for inviting me to that party. It's really thoughtful of you to include me. I really appreciate that. I actually can't make it on that night. But next time there's a party, please invite me again. I'd love to go. See how I said no? That was easy. Another way you could say no is if someone asks you to help. They might say, can you please help me with this charity fundraiser thing on Thursday? We really need extra hands. And you're going to look at your schedule and go, oh, I could do it at a pinch, but it would involve a lot of organising and juggling, and I'd be rushed off my feet and I might not get my other tasks done. So the idea here is you look at your schedule before answering and say, is that realistic? Could I help? Could I actually do that? And you might say to someone, well, I'd love to help you, but unfortunately, I'm fully booked that day. But perhaps you could ask another person and would name that other person. Or, I'm really sorry, I can't help you on that day. I would love to have, but I just can't fit it in. So there's a way to be really tactful with saying no, and that feedback sandwich model is a great one because it helps you to, acknowledge that the other person has offered something or needs something and you've politely declined. So I invite you to practice that. It is something that takes some practice if you're not used to saying no. It's a skill that you can develop. And you can start with small things that are easy to say no to and then work up to the bigger things. You can say no to things that you don't have time for or that you don't want to do. And you don't have to justify yourself. You just have to say, I can't or I'm not available, because that's honest. If you'd or I'm not really interested in that. Thank you anyway, but that's not for me. If you can be honest like that, then you can be really authentic and you don't have to whiz around in your mind with the reasons and the excuses and the guilt and what the other person might. So, as you can see, there's quite a lot to creating a simple life. But all you really need to do is start somewhere. Declutter one drawer, or just take a 5-minute breather to get your brain in the right state to be creative or intentional or focused, or whatever it is you need to do. A 5-minute brain break or a 10-minute decluttering are two ways to create simplicity in your thoughts and in your environment and to learn how to say no. I hope you found this useful, and I invite you to think of one thing that you could take from this episode, this video, and apply to your own life. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.